High in the snow-covered mountains of ancient Tibet, nearly 1,000 years ago, there lived a man whose life would become one of the most remarkable stories of transformation in human history. Today, he is remembered as Tibet's greatest saint and yogi, a master of meditation whose teachings continue to inspire millions. Yet Milarepa's journey did not begin with wisdom, peace, or spiritual enlightenment. It began with suffering, anger, revenge, and dark choices that would forever change the course of his life. His story is extraordinary because it shows that even a person who has committed terrible mistakes can completely transform and discover profound truth. Milarepa was born in the 11th century into a prosperous family in western Tibet. His father was a successful merchant, and during his early childhood, life was comfortable and secure. The family enjoyed wealth, respect, and a promising future. However, this peaceful life came to a sudden end when Milarepa's father became seriously ill. Knowing that his death was approaching, he entrusted the family's property and wealth to relatives until his young son became old enough to inherit everything. But after his father's death, those relatives betrayed the family's trust. Instead of protecting the inheritance, they seized the property for themselves and reduced Milarepa, his mother, and his sister to lives of poverty and humiliation. The family that had once been respected was forced to work as servants in what had once been their own home. As the years passed, Milarepa's mother became consumed by grief and anger. She watched helplessly as her children suffered while their relatives enjoyed the wealth that rightfully belonged to them. Her pain gradually transformed into a burning desire for revenge. According to traditional accounts, she eventually demanded that her sons seek the power necessary to punish those responsible for their suffering. Obedient to his mother and filled with his own anger, the young Milarepa left home in search of teachers who could instruct him in the secret arts of sorcery and black magic. What began as a quest for justice slowly became a journey into darkness. Milarepa proved to be a talented student. He learned rituals and practices that were believed to influence powerful forces of nature. After years of training, he finally gained the abilities he needed to carry out his revenge. Tibetan traditions tell of a wedding celebration attended by many of the relatives who had wronged his family. Using the powers he had acquired, Milarepa allegedly caused a disaster that destroyed the building during the celebration, killing numerous people. Not satisfied with this alone, he later unleashed devastating hailstorms that ruined crops and brought further suffering to those connected with his enemies. Whether interpreted literally or symbolically, these stories reveal the depth of his hatred and the destructive consequences of revenge. He had finally achieved what his mother wanted, yet the victory brought him no happiness. Instead of feeling satisfied, Milarepa became haunted by guilt. The suffering he had caused weighed heavily on his conscience. For the first time, he began to understand that hatred only creates more suffering. The lives lost because of his actions could never be restored, and the burden of responsibility became impossible to ignore. He realized that if he continued on this path, he would spend the rest of his life trapped by regret and fear. Desperate to find a way out, Milarepa turned away from black magic and began searching for a spiritual teacher who could guide him toward redemption and inner peace. His search eventually led him to Marpa the translator, one of the most respected Buddhist masters in Tibet. Marpa had traveled repeatedly to India, where he studied under great spiritual teachers and brought precious Buddhist teachings back to Tibet. When Milarepa first arrived, he expected compassion and immediate instruction. Instead, he encountered a teacher who seemed unusually harsh. Marpa refused to give him advanced teachings and subjected him to years of physically demanding labor. Again and again, Marpa ordered Milarepa to build large stone towers by himself. Just as the work was completed, he would command him to tear them down and start over in a different location. This cycle repeated multiple times, leaving Milarepa exhausted, confused, and covered with wounds. At first, Milarepa could not understand why his teacher treated him this way. He often felt rejected and hopeless. Yet Marpa recognized that ordinary instruction would not be enough for a man carrying such a heavy burden from his past. The endless labor was designed to purify Milarepa's mind and break down the pride, anger, and attachment that still remained within him. Every stone he carried became part of a deeper transformation. Through patience, humility, and perseverance, the man who had once sought revenge slowly began to change. Years later, when Marpa finally judged that his student was ready, he gave Milarepa the teachings he had been seeking. After receiving these instructions, Milarepa withdrew into the remote mountains of Tibet to dedicate himself completely to meditation. He lived alone in caves high among the snowy peaks, far from villages and worldly distractions. The conditions were extremely harsh. Winters were brutal, food was scarce, and loneliness was constant. Tradition states that he survived for long periods eating little more than wild nettles, causing his skin to take on a greenish color. Yet these hardships no longer troubled him. His focus was directed entirely toward understanding the true nature of reality and the workings of the human mind. During years of intense meditation, Milarepa carefully observed every aspect of his inner experience. He watched thoughts appear and disappear. He studied emotions such as fear, anger, desire, and attachment. He examined the sense of self that most people assume to be permanent and unchanging. The deeper he looked, the more he realized that thoughts and emotions were temporary events, constantly arising and fading away. They were not solid, permanent realities. This insight gradually transformed his understanding of existence and brought him closer to enlightenment. One of Milarepa's most important discoveries concerned what Buddhist teachings describe as the nature of mind. He taught that most people become trapped by their thoughts and emotions because they mistakenly identify with them. A person becomes angry and believes they are their anger. They become fearful and believe they are their fear. Milarepa realized that beneath this constant mental activity exists a deeper awareness that remains unchanged. He often compared the mind to the open sky. Thoughts and emotions are like clouds moving across it. The clouds may be dark or bright, calm or stormy, but the sky itself remains vast, open, and untouched. According to Milarepa, true freedom comes when a person recognizes this deeper awareness directly through experience. As his realization deepened, Milarepa became known throughout Tibet as an extraordinary yogi and spiritual teacher. Students traveled great distances to learn from him. Unlike many scholars of his time, he often taught through spontaneous songs and poetic verses. These songs expressed profound spiritual truths in language that ordinary people could understand. His teachings emphasized direct experience rather than blind belief. He encouraged people to investigate their own minds, confront their illusions, and discover wisdom through personal practice. Because of his own difficult past, his teachings carried a special power. He was living proof that transformation was possible. Milarepa's reputation continued to grow throughout his lifetime. People were amazed that a man once associated with black magic and destruction had become a symbol of compassion, wisdom, and enlightenment. His life challenged the belief that individuals are permanently defined by their mistakes. Instead, he demonstrated that sincere effort, self-awareness, and spiritual discipline can completely transform a person's character. This message resonated deeply with people then and continues to resonate today. Nearly 1,000 years after his death, Milarepa remains one of the most beloved figures in Tibetan Buddhism. His songs, teachings, and life story are still studied around the world. Yet perhaps his greatest legacy is not any particular teaching, but the example of his own transformation. He began life as a victim of injustice, became consumed by hatred, committed terrible acts in pursuit of revenge, and then found the courage to confront his mistakes and seek a higher truth. Through years of hardship, discipline, and meditation, he discovered a freedom that could not be found through power, wealth, or revenge. The story of Milarepa ultimately reminds us that the greatest battles are fought within the human mind. Revenge may promise satisfaction, but it often creates more suffering. Anger may feel powerful, but it rarely brings peace. True transformation begins when a person honestly confronts themselves and chooses a different path. Milarepa's journey from black magic to Buddhahood stands as one of history's most powerful examples of redemption. His message continues to echo across the centuries. No matter how dark the past may be, wisdom and awakening remain possible, and beneath the storms of thought and emotion lies a deeper awareness that is already free.